From the sports desk, let's head to the Beijing Winter Olympics, where 15-year-old figure skater Kamila Valieva of Russia continues to make headlines following her doping scandal. The teenage sensation has been allowed to continue competing despite testing positive for a banned substance, a decision which has seen the International Olympic Committee facing criticism. To chat more on this, we're joined now live by eNCA correspondent Mark Dreyer in Beijing. A very good morning to you, Mark. Thank you so much for your time. So you're on the ground in Beijing. What are the latest developments on this case?
Well, the whole thing, frankly, is a bit of a mess. I think the communication around this doping scandal has been disastrous because the ruling that was made earlier in the week that cleared her to compete in the singles program was widely seen as a judgment on the case. In fact, it was a very narrow technical ruling that just said it was okay for the Russian doping authorities to overturn its own imposed ban, which was imposed for a few days, and then Valieva and her team had appealed. So the Russians have said, yes, she's okay to compete. There's every indication that she's going to be prosecuted and perhaps found guilty further down the line, but that's not going to be until months from now. So we have this really messy situation where she's competing under a huge cloud of suspicion, and they're putting everything in place to say, well, there won't be a medal ceremony should she win one of the medals. She's leading right now, widely expected to win. So it's certainly casting a cloud over these games right now.
And speaking of casting a cloud, Mark, before the Winter Olympics even began, there were already issues surrounding human rights that led to diplomatic boycotts. How does this now further impact the image of the Winter Olympics?
Well, there's two ways to look at this. One is that this is detracting away from more China-focused sensitive issues, human rights that you mentioned, that perhaps the authorities wouldn't want being discussed. But on the other hand, it's also detracting from some of the positive Chinese stories. We've seen fantastic Chinese performances at these games. They've overperformed in several categories, and we have a couple of young stars whose stories, to a certain extent globally, are being overshadowed by this doping scandal. So depending on how you look at it, but either way, it's not a great look for the IOC and for these games to have this Valieva cloud still looming over the games. It
is really complicated, Mark, because what are the prospects of a resolution, and what happens if she does in fact end up winning gold, which is quite likely because she has been doing quite well. I know there will be an asterisk next to her name with the results, but what exactly does this mean?
Well, the situation we're faced with now, it's widely expected. She is leading going into the free skate program this evening. It's widely expected as the most talented skater by far in the world that she will finish in first, but there won't be a medal ceremony. So the other skaters don't know what medals they're going to finish. Imagine if you finish fourth and Valieva's in the top three. You know, are you going to get a medal? And if so, when? We just don't know. These doping cases historically take months, sometimes even years before they're fully resolved. Now, you know, they've protecting her as a minor, and they're saying it's too tight to rule on this definitively right now. Those are legal arguments that hold some water, but from a public point of view, the whole thing is very chaotic.
It's quite a big mess, isn't it, Mark? So you touched on this a little bit, but I want you to delve into it a little bit further because, you know, I find it a little bit unfair on her fellow competitors, the other figure skaters, because, you know, they've kind of been overshadowed by all of this. It's their time to shine, but all the attention is on Valieva. How do you think this then affects them, their performance, as well as the outcome when it comes to the result?
It's very, very difficult for all the skaters, including Valieva herself. You know, there's definitely an argument to be made that she is a victim of the Russian system and that she would have had no choice taking a substance that was illegal if that is in fact what's happened. But if you're one of the other athletes and this is your golden moment potentially, if you're standing on the top of the podium and Valieva is also on the podium next to you, but of course there won't be a medal ceremony, you know, you've had that moment robbed from you. They will have a medal ceremony later down the line. They've said that, but we don't know when or where. So all the attention, instead of being on the skaters and their excellent performances, is on this single case and the long history of doping that China has brought into these Olympics and the previous games as well.
Mark, during the Summer Olympics, Sha'Carri Richardson from the USA, she tested positive for marijuana and then could no longer participate at the Olympics. So she's come out and said that she feels that the IOC and the Beijing Winter Olympics have double standards. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, there is one difference between Richardson's case and Valieva's, and that is that Richardson is 21 and was 21 at the Games last summer. Valieva is just 15, and so under the anti-doping code, she is protected as a minor. Now, you could say, well, you know, if she's competing against adults, she should be treated like everyone else, but that is the argument that they are sticking to. Whether you believe it or not is another case, but there is a technical difference, a 6-year gap, which puts Valieva in a different legal category here, and that's why she's getting what would be seen from Richardson's point of view, a different and special treatment.
All right, Mark, very quickly, I have run out of time, and I might get into trouble for squeezing one more question in, but I want to also, away from Valieva, talk about Peng Shuai. You know, there's been a lot of concern about her. She has been seen in public here and there, but no one is actually sure if she's okay. What do you think about the handling of that situation in China?
Well, it's important to remember that her case has not been covered at all in China. It's been completely censored because of the sensitive nature of her initial allegations, which is now publicly retracted, but I don't think that's really convincing too many people outside of China for that. So it was a slightly farcical situation to kind of bring a retired now tennis player to the Winter Olympics. She had to come into the Olympic bubble. She's now, we hear, in quarantine in Beijing, so there was no real need for her to be there. And again, it was when Eileen Gu, one of the stars of these games, was winning her first medal, a gold medal, and there she was with IOC President Thomas Bach. So just a kind of bizarre angle, really. The conversation hasn't really moved on, I think, with her appearance at these games. We've seen her wheeled out previously at sporting events in China. And so it remains to be seen about the future of women's tennis here, and if the WTA, the Women's Tennis Association, still holds firm and says that it won't compete in China until a further investigation is concluded.
All right, thank you very much, Mark. You're very right. It is a bizarre situation, but thank you for unpacking the Valieva situation for us. Thank you so much. That was eNCA correspondent Mark Dreyer joining us live from Beijing.